The moment you stop chasing her is the moment everything changes. It's not manipulation. It's human psychology at its most fundamental level. When you withdraw your attention, when you stop being available at her every whim, when you reclaim your power and focus on your own life, something shifts in the dynamic that she can't ignore. This isn't about games or tricks. It's about understanding the timeless principles of attraction that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. The prince who appears too eager loses his mystique, but the one who maintains his distance commands respect and desire. The hardest lesson every man must learn is that the more desperately you chase someone, the faster they run away from you. It's written into our DNA, this fundamental truth about human nature that Machiavelli observed in the courts of Renaissance Italy. When you make yourself completely available, when you text her constantly, when you rearrange your entire schedule around her availability, you're not showing love, you're showing weakness. And weakness, no matter how well-intentioned, kills attraction faster than almost anything else. The woman who seemed so interested when you were mysterious and unavailable suddenly becomes cold and distant when you reveal just how much you want her. This isn't cruelty, it's biology. Think about the last time someone pursued you relentlessly. Maybe a friend who always wanted to hang out or a colleague who constantly sought your approval. How did it make you feel? Probably uncomfortable, maybe even annoyed. You started avoiding them, making excuses, finding reasons to be busy. The same psychological mechanism that made you pull away from that overeager person is exactly what happens when you chase a woman too hard. She doesn't wake up one morning and decide to be difficult. Her brain is simply responding to the evolutionary programming that tells her a man who has nothing better to do than chase her probably isn't worth having. It's harsh, but it's reality. The moment you understand this dynamic, everything changes. You realize that all those nights you spent crafting the perfect text message, all those times you canceled plans with friends to be available for her, all those moments you compromised your own values to make her happy, none of it was bringing you closer to what you wanted. In fact, it was pushing you further away. The irony is devastating. The harder you try to win someone's love, the more you guarantee you'll never have it. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's how the system is designed to work. Attraction isn't logical, and it certainly isn't fair. But here's where Machiavelli's wisdom becomes invaluable. He understood that power dynamics govern all human relationships, including romantic ones. The person who needs the relationship less has more power in the relationship. When you're constantly chasing, constantly available, constantly accommodating, you're essentially announcing to the world that you need her more than she needs you. And that imbalance of power is relationship poison. She might enjoy the attention for a while, might even feel flattered by your devotion, but deep down she's losing respect for you with every desperate gesture you make. The transformation begins the moment you recognize this pattern in your own behavior. Maybe you've been that guy who double texts when she doesn't respond quickly enough. Maybe you've been the one who always initiates contact, always suggests plans, always tries to keep the conversation going, even when it's clearly dying. Maybe you've been sacrificing your own goals, your own friendships, your own identity in the pursuit of someone who seems perpetually just out of reach. The recognition is painful, but it's also liberating, because once you see the pattern, you can break it. And breaking this pattern isn't about becoming cold or cruel or manipulative. It's about reclaiming your self-respect and remembering that you have value independent of anyone else's approval. It's about understanding that a healthy relationship requires two people who choose each other, not one person desperately trying to convince the other to stay. When you stop chasing, you're not playing a game. You're finally playing by the rules that govern all successful relationships. You're acknowledging that attraction is a two-way street, and if someone isn't meeting you halfway, they're not worth the journey. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. In modern terms, this means people value what appears valuable, not necessarily what is valuable. When you make yourself constantly available to someone, you're destroying your own perceived value in their eyes. It's not conscious on their part. They don't sit down and calculate your worth based on your availability, but subconsciously, they begin to see you as common, ordinary, easily obtained, and humans by nature don't treasure what comes easily. We treasure what we have to work for, what challenges us, what remains just slightly out of reach. This principle of scarcity governs everything from economics to romance. The diamond industry built an empire on artificial scarcity, convincing generations that rare stones were more valuable than abundant ones. The same psychology applies to relationships. When you're always there, always ready to drop everything for her, always eager to please, you become like air. Essential for survival, perhaps, but completely taken for granted. She stops noticing your presence because it's guaranteed. She stops appreciating your efforts because they're expected. She stops feeling lucky to have your attention because she's never had to wonder if she might lose it. The moment you withdraw that constant availability, everything shifts. Suddenly she notices your absence. Suddenly she wonders what you're doing, who you're with, why you're not texting her back immediately. This isn't manipulation. It's natural human psychology. We notice what changes, not what stays the same. When you were always available, your presence became background noise. When you become selectively available, your presence becomes noteworthy again. She starts to remember why she was attracted to you in the first place, back when you had your own life, your own goals, your own mysterious depths that she wanted to explore. But here's the crucial distinction. This isn't about playing hard to get for the sake of playing games. This is about actually being hard to get, because you have a life worth living. When you stop chasing her, you don't sit at home staring at your phone, calculating how long to wait before responding to her messages. You go out and build the kind of life that naturally makes you less available. You pursue your career goals with renewed focus. You strengthen your friendships. You develop new skills, explore new interests, become the kind of person who has genuine reasons to be busy. This authentic unavailability is far more powerful than any manufactured scarcity could ever be. The beauty of this approach is that it's sustainable. You're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're becoming someone better. You're not playing a character. You're developing character. And when she starts to notice your absence, when she begins to wonder why you're not as eager to please as you used to be, when she finds herself thinking about you more often than she used to, you're not there because you're genuinely engaged in building a life that doesn't revolve around her approval. This authenticity is what makes the strategy so effective. She can sense that your distance isn't a tactic, it's a transformation. And that transformation is exactly what triggers her obsession. She realizes that the man who used to be so easy to predict, so easy to control, so easy to take for granted, has become someone she needs to work to understand again. The familiar has become foreign. The guaranteed has become uncertain. And uncertainty, as any psychologist will tell you, is one of the most powerful drivers of human interest. When she can't predict your next move, when she can't count on your immediate response, when she realizes that your attention has become a prize to be won rather than a given to be expected, her entire perception of you changes. And with that change in perception comes a change in her behavior. The most profound change that occurs when you stop chasing isn't in her behavior, it's in yours. For perhaps the first time in the relationship, you're operating from a position of strength rather than weakness. You're no longer the supplicant begging for scraps of attention. You're the prize that she needs to work to win. This shift in power dynamics is immediately noticeable to her. Even if she can't articulate exactly what has changed, she senses that something fundamental has shifted in the relationship. And that shift makes her uncomfortable in the best possible way. Discomfort, after all, is the precursor to growth, and growth is the precursor to genuine attraction. When you were chasing, every interaction was predictable. She knew that no matter how she treated you, no matter how long she took to respond to your messages, no matter how often she canceled plans or showed up late or seemed distracted when you were together, you would still be there, still trying, still hoping. That predictability was comfortable for her, but comfort is the enemy of passion. Passion requires uncertainty, requires the possibility of loss, requires the knowledge that what you have could disappear if you don't value it properly. By always being available, you had eliminated all uncertainty from her experience of you. Now, suddenly, she can't predict your responses. When she texts you, she doesn't know if you'll respond immediately or in a few hours, or at all. When she suggests getting together, she doesn't know if you'll eagerly agree or tell her you already have plans. When she tries to engage you in the same old patterns of conversation, she finds that you're no longer playing your predictable role. This unpredictability creates a cognitive dissonance in her mind. The version of you that she had categorized and filed away no longer matches the reality of who you're becoming. And humans hate cognitive dissonance. We're driven to resolve it. Her attempts to resolve this dissonance will manifest in increased attention toward you. She'll start initiating contact more often, trying to reestablish the old dynamic where she was in control. She'll suggest plans, ask about your day, try to draw you into longer conversations. She's not doing this because she suddenly realized she loves you. She's doing it because she's trying to restore the familiar power balance that made her feel secure. But if you maintain your new position, if you remain selectively available and focused on your own life, her attempts to restore the old dynamic will fail, and that failure will force her to confront a new reality. That new reality is that you are no longer someone she can take for granted. You have become someone she needs to earn. And this shift from taking to earning is where obsession begins. When she realizes that your attention, your time, your energy are no longer guaranteed, she begins to value them in a way she never did before. It's the same psychological principle that makes people want what they can't have. When your attention was freely given, it had no value. Now that it must be earned, it becomes precious. She finds herself working for something she used to receive without effort, and that work makes the reward more meaningful. The irony is that by stopping your pursuit, you've made yourself more attractive than you ever were when you were trying to be attractive. When you were chasing, you were demonstrating neediness, desperation, a lack of options. Now, by focusing on your own life and being selectively available, you're demonstrating confidence, independence, and the kind of mysterious depth that originally drew her to you. You're not trying to prove your worth anymore. You're simply living in a way that demonstrates it. And demonstration is always more powerful than declaration. This shift in power dynamics doesn't just affect how she sees you. It affects how you see yourself. When you stop chasing, you remember what it feels like to have self-respect. You remember what it feels like to have boundaries, to have standards, to believe that you deserve someone who chooses you enthusiastically, rather than someone you have to convince to stay. This internal transformation is visible to her, and it's part of what makes you suddenly so much more attractive. You're not the same person who was desperately seeking her approval. You've become someone who knows his own value and doesn't need external validation to confirm it. Human beings are wired to notice loss more acutely than gain. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it explains why people will fight harder to keep something they already have than to acquire something new of equal value. When you stop chasing her, you're triggering this fundamental aspect of human psychology. She may not have fully appreciated your attention when it was constant and guaranteed, but she certainly notices when it's withdrawn. The absence of something she took for granted creates a void that she suddenly feels compelled to fill. This isn't about her realizing she loves you. It's about her realizing she's lost something that she didn't know she valued until it was gone. The timing of this realization is crucial. It doesn't happen immediately when you stop chasing. At first, she might actually feel relieved. The pressure is off. She doesn't have to respond to your constant messages or find excuses to avoid your invitations. She might even enjoy the freedom from your attention for a few days or weeks. But as time passes and your absence becomes more noticeable, as she realizes that you're not coming back with the same eager energy you used to have, something shifts in her perception. The relief transforms into curiosity, then into concern, then into something approaching panic. This progression from relief to panic is where the obsession begins to take root. She starts to wonder what changed. She starts to question whether she misjudged the situation. She begins to replay your interactions in her mind, looking for clues about when and why you pulled back. She might even start to romanticize the attention you used to give her, remembering it more fondly than she experienced it at the time. This is the psychological phenomenon known as rosy retrospection, the tendency to remember past events more positively than they were actually experienced. Your constant attention, which felt suffocating when it was happening, now feels like evidence of how much you cared about her. As her concern grows, she begins to take actions she never would have taken when you were chasing her. She starts initiating conversations. She suggests getting together. She asks mutual friends about you. She might even reach out with seemingly casual messages designed to gauge your interest level. Each of these actions represents a reversal of the previous power dynamic. She's now in the position of pursuing, of wondering, of hoping for a response. And with each action she takes that doesn't immediately restore the old dynamic, her investment in the outcome increases. She's now emotionally invested in a way she never was when you were doing all the work. The beautiful irony is that her increased investment makes her more attractive to you, just as your decreased availability has made you more attractive to her. When someone is working to win your attention, when they're putting effort into the relationship, when they're showing genuine interest rather than passive acceptance, it's naturally more appealing than when they're simply tolerating your presence. You begin to see sides of her personality that you never saw when you were chasing. Her capacity for pursuit, her ability to be vulnerable, her willingness to take emotional risks. These qualities were always there, but they were hidden beneath the comfortable certainty that you would always be available. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of this psychological shift is how it affects her self-perception. When she finds herself thinking about you more often, when she catches herself checking her phone for messages from you, when she realizes she's putting effort into winning back your attention, she begins to question her own feelings. Why do I care so much? She asks herself. Why does his distance bother me? These questions force her to confront the possibility that her feelings for you were deeper than she realized. She begins to wonder if she made a mistake by taking you for granted. And that wondering, that questioning, that self-doubt is the fertile ground in which obsession grows. She's no longer certain about her feelings, and uncertainty has a way of intensifying whatever emotions already exist. When you stop chasing her, you don't just change her behavior. You fundamentally alter the nature of her desire. What was once passive acceptance transforms into active pursuit. What was once comfortable certainty becomes urgent need. What was once taken for granted becomes desperately wanted. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen through manipulation or games. It happens because you've changed the fundamental equation of the relationship. You've moved from being someone who needs her to someone she needs. And that shift in need creates a corresponding shift in the intensity and quality of her feelings. The desire that emerges from this transformation is qualitatively different from anything that existed when you were chasing her. When you were pursuing, any interest she showed felt obligatory, like she was responding to pressure rather than genuine attraction. Now when she reaches out, when she suggests spending time together, when she shows interest in your life, it feels authentic because it is authentic. She's not responding to your pursuit. She's initiating her own. She's not accommodating your needs. She's expressing her own. This authenticity makes her attention more valuable to you, just as your selective availability has made your attention more valuable to her. The psychological mechanism at work here is what researchers call psychological reactance. When people feel their freedom is threatened, they become motivated to restore that freedom. When you were constantly available, she never felt like her freedom to choose was at stake. Your attention was guaranteed regardless of her behavior. But when you withdrew that guarantee, when you made your attention conditional on mutual interest and respect, you created a situation where she had to choose. And the act of choosing, of working to earn something rather than simply receiving it, creates a deeper level of investment and attachment. This is why the women who become most obsessed with men who stop chasing them are often the ones who were most indifferent when those men were pursuing. The greater the contrast between your previous availability and your current selectivity, the more dramatic the psychological impact. She's forced to reconcile two completely different versions of you, the eager pursuer and the selective prize. This cognitive dissonance creates an almost compulsive need to understand what changed, to figure out how to bridge the gap between who you were and who you've become. And that compulsive need is the foundation of obsession. But the most profound transformation isn't in her desire for you. It's in your understanding of your own worth. When you stop chasing, when you focus on building a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's approval, when you become the kind of person who has genuine reasons to be selective with your time and attention, you discover something powerful. You don't need anyone's validation to know your value. This self-knowledge is attractive in a way that desperation never could be. It's magnetic because it's authentic. It draws people toward you because it represents something they want for themselves, the confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you're worth. The final irony is that by stopping your pursuit of her, you often end up with something better than what you were originally chasing. You either get her genuine interest and respect, earned rather than given out of pity or obligation, or you discover that you don't actually want someone who only values you when you're unavailable. Either outcome is a victory. Either way, you've broken free from the exhausting cycle of chasing someone who doesn't appreciate what you have to offer. You've learned that the most attractive thing you can be is someone who knows their own worth and doesn't compromise it for anyone. And that lesson, once learned, transforms not just this relationship, but every relationship that follows. You become the kind of person who attracts genuine interest because you've become genuinely interesting. You become someone worth obsessing over because you've stopped obsessing over others.